Good morning. Hey, this is Dr. Charles Dent with our Monday morning coffee. I hope you had a great Father's Day this past weekend. We know that, Father's Day, it's exciting. It's exciting to be rewarded, to be getting a pat on the back from your kids, from your wife, from your significant others. It's extremely important to be a voice or be a present in the presence of your children. I mean, there's the power of presence. And I think when fathers are communicating or just being in the presence of their kids, man, it makes a difference in their lives. So I want to talk about something that I think a lot of fathers are familiar with. If you have ever been on a team, basketball, football, baseball, or any sport team, I mean, hockey, soccer, it doesn't matter what team you've been part of, you always know that coaches have one thing: they have a playbook. And so my wife and I have been working on our parenting playbook, and they should be ready by the end of August before our kids go back to school. But think about this. If you look at as a parent, when we became a parent, who gave us a playbook? Who put a playbook in our hand and said, hey, this is what your kid's gonna have to deal with. This is what you're gonna have to deal with in life. And this is gonna help you get through and how to manage these things in life. And it's amazing you think about it. So every great coach has a playbook. They got a playbook, and they go by that playbook. They create the culture. They create the climate for winning. And I think about people like Nick Saban, but I want to go back to think about somebody like John Wooden and what kind of playbook he had. When I read his book, I look at how many times he had strategic practices. He paid attention to the tennis shoes his players wore. He paid attention to make sure they string them up. He did everything to create a playbook. And it's amazing. He won all these championships. And I find very few people following his strategy for success. I don't know how Nick Saban is doing it in the University of Alabama. I never read anything of Nick Saban. We just don't know. But I know what John Wooden wrote. And I think that parents sometimes forget we need a playbook. Men, we need a playbook in our lives. We need to know how to address certain issues in life. So now I have a playbook. Yeah, I know sometimes the play doesn't work. But the key thing about being a great coach is not so much is the play working. It's how do I get my team to execute the play? How do I get every piece working to execute this playbook so that we can be successful? And men, we need a playbook. We need a playbook in our life. We need a playbook as a parent. We need a playbook to show us how that we're going to be successful in life. And sometimes we look at situations and we're not successful because we don't have a playbook. We don't have one. And we don't know how to create one. We don't know how to look at one and say, hey, what does I need to do now in my life? And some people say, well, I'm too old. Man, I found that some of the best coaches are the ones who have a lot of experience, who have gone through things in their life. So I want to talk about one thing I know great coaches pay attention to. What great coaches do, they pay attention to the weaknesses of their team. They pay attention to the weakness of the opposition team. I remember when I was a kid growing up, I got to remind myself of one particular player, Lawrence Taylor. And I remember how teams used to strategically try to figure out how they're going to stop Lawrence Taylor. Man, Lawrence Taylor was just a beast on defense for the New York Giants. But people made plans. The team was strategized is basically on offense. Now watch this now. Offense had to find out a way. How do we stop Lawrence Taylor from getting in the backfield, from being an impact player? I'm telling you, it's amazing how coaches had to rethink their plays and just trying to stop Lawrence Taylor. Man, I remember many times. I remember one time when I heard about Emmitt Smith when Jimmy Johnson was a coach. And Emmitt Smith was not focused, and Jimmy Johnson snatched him aside and said, what's on your mind? Because he was not focused. He had fumbled the ball. He had done some other things. And Jimmy Johnson realized immediately he had lost focus. But who has taught us this? Who have taught us? Who have pulled us aside and say, Charles, you don't lost focus. You're not focused on the task at hand. You have lost focus. Who's the one say, hey man, you're gonna have opposition in your life. You got to know how to defend against opposition because you're gonna have it. But so we don't have a playbook, and we need that playbook. And so one of the things I want to share in our playbook is this: as a parent, as a man, is addressing the weaknesses. Addressing your own weaknesses, because all of us have weaknesses in our life, and sometimes we don't admit them, but we got them. We all have them. So the opposition find out your weakness and they exploit it, and they exploit your weaknesses. And man, you talk about frustration. You talk about even when I was a little league coach, Man, how we found the weakness of the team and we exploited that opposition, whether it was a player, whether it's we can run this particular play. Man, we exploited that weakness. And I'm telling you, that's life. So how do you overcome your weaknesses? And so I'm going to share part of my playbook today is about how to overcome weaknesses. And I'm going to give you 3 things I think need to happen. First, you need to identify your weakness. Second, you need to redefine your weakness. And third, you need to know how to work through them. Because I remember watching when Alabama had a problem in their backfield, Nick Saban had to find a way to work through that thing with his defensive back and his defensive coaches. They had to find a way to work through it. So what they did, they had a strength. So what they did is make sure the defensive line was able to penetrate the offensive line and keep the quarterback from throwing the ball. Because they knew that was a weakness, but his strength was somewhere else. And that's what we have to look at in life. We all have weaknesses and we need to deal with. So how do I identify? Number one, here's the thing. As I identify my weakness, this is what I'm going to do. Number one, I'm going to make a list. I'm going to write a list of my weaknesses. I'm going to write out a list of all my weaknesses. Because if I want to get better in anything in my life, I got to identify the weakness of it. If you want to get better in your relationship, you say, well, you want to get better in your relationship with your wife, your children, anybody, ask yourself, what is the weakness? And one of the weaknesses may be your area of communication, that you're a poor communicator. Every time you communicate, it seems like you're angry, you're frustrated. And so you have to be able to deal with that, because if you are a poor communicator, you can say, hey, that's my weaknesses. I'm gonna learn how to be a better communicator. Because some people say men don't talk much. Yes, we do. That's a lie. We do talk. And sometimes we talk more than we need to, but we do talk. But if something sometimes we shut down, it's because sometimes we don't see that as a weakness. That I shut down when things going wrong and I go like, what's wrong? Nothing. How many times you said nothing? How many times you heard a man say nothing? There is something going on. But that's a weakness because we don't know how to communicate that. We don't know how to deal with that. So you have to identify your weakness. Number 2, in identifying your weakness, you have to do something to find out what's the root cause of it. Because I know when I was growing up, I hate conflict. I hated conflict. I mean, I'm telling you, I hate it with a great passion. And the reason why I hated conflict is because sometimes people try to bully their way into telling you, getting you to do a certain thing. And I thought that was wrong. Because a lot of you have grown up with, and you've been bullied by people. I remember when I was growing up, I was being bullied by people. Man, I'm gonna tell you something. At one time, I used to flee from it. I used to run from it. But then there's times when I said, man, I got to fight this thing. Because the key thing is, it's become a conflict. And sometimes you should run from conflict. Just run from it. And tell you, that's a sign of immaturity as well. You know, so you got to get to the root cause of why this is happening. Get to the root of it. And once you learn to get to the root of it, you can help yourself and you can help people better around you, because this is your playbook. Because what happened is you're going to get to the weakness. And I remember watching football teams. I remember saying, okay, what's wrong with this kid? Why? He's in the wrong position. We put him in the wrong position. That's why, that's his weakness. But we moved into a different position, and man, he was a beast. Because sometimes you got the person in the wrong place and you don't know how to move them. You say, oh, you're going to learn how to do this. But no, he's not good in that area. But he's a good quarterback, or he's a good lineman, or he's a good receiver. And you have to move that person into the place. Because sometimes as coaches, you think that person can do that. And you try to make them do it. But they don't have a heart for it. They're not good at it. But you move into somewhere else, man, they become a beast. And so that's why a playbook is necessary. You have to know your players. You got to be able to identify that weakness. You got to be able to see. You got to be able to say and get to the root cause of it. The third thing is ask for help. I never forget when I saw Mark Jackson go to Golden State to be the coach. Mark Jackson was smart enough to bring some other players around him to give him help. And see, sometimes we have so much pride in us, we won't ask for help. And it's a good thing to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. You know, ask for it. There's no problem with that. And the fourth thing is about identifying your weaknesses. This is identify what we need to change. And you just be able to say, okay, I need to change this. There's certain things I need to change. Because if that weakness is not serving you, it's not getting you the results you want, ask yourself, can I make the change in my life? And as a coach, you understand, man, we need to make some changes. And I can never forget when I sit around at the table with other coaches, and they start talking about the weakness of their team. And then when you mention, hey, what is it that we can change in this? Do we need to put a different player in this? Do we need to do this with this? How do we change this? And sometimes that's what we need to do. And we don't know how to do that as parents. We don't know how to do that as men. And sometimes we just struggle with that. So what changes need to be made? And the fifth thing is this. In identifying all these witnesses, put forth an effort. We got to put forth an effort and say, hey, we're going to do something about this. We're going to make some change in their life. We're going to put some effort. We're going to measure it. We're going to start looking at it. And we're not going to lie to ourselves. We're not going to deceive ourselves thinking that it is working. In the playbook, we say, hey, let's do this. Let's put forth an effort. Let's go out there. Let's see what we're going to do. All right? And that's what we have to do in life. That's when we're going to deal with our weaknesses. Hey, there's a part 2 to this and a part 3 to this. And I want to share with you, hey, but this Dr. Charles Dent with our Monday morning coffee. I hope you men had a great day. And hey, the playbook, we need that in our life. Thank you. God bless.